Hi everyone. Welcome to our joint webcast with Motio, where we will be showcasing migrations between analytic platforms. My name is Emily Ballesteri, a marketing analyst at Cresco, an analytics solution builder. I will be the moderator for today's event. We wanted to start off by thanking you all for joining the webcast today. At the end of the webcast, there will be a Q&A section where you can ask your questions about your interests from the webcast. During the webcast, we will be polling questions and appreciate your feedback. Also, we will be live tweeting with the hashtag #GoodMigrations. Please follow Cresco's Twitter account, which is at Cresco_Intel, INTL, and Motio's Twitter account, which is Motio at Motio_Inc. to follow these live tweets. I would like to introduce today's speakers, Darren Nelson from Motio and Sanjeev Datta from Cresco. Darren will be discussing how to keep your Cognos users happy and uninterrupted when upgrading to the latest version of IBM Cognos. We will also look at how Motio's new product, Thea, can work across multiple BI platforms and be introduced in Cresco Analytics visualization. With that being said, I will pass on the floor to Darren. Darren?
Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining. Everyone on this webinar has experienced a migration, an upgrade, or a replacement of a BI system. Whether as an individual responsible for its success, part of a team that was tasked with the job, or as a person who relies on those systems to get through their day, we all have a story to tell. Today, organizations rely on these systems of record to ensure the timely and accurate delivery of information assets. In brief, people just need these systems to be on all the time. Before we continue, we're going to present you with a few polling questions that we'll discuss. So, Emily?
Hi. So our first polling question will be, are you planning an upgrade to Cognos Analytics? We would appreciate your feedback for each question. Our next question will be, how many of you are migrating from existing systems to a different platform? Check all that apply. Our next question will be, how many of you are migrating from one of the following existing systems? Check all that apply. And our final question will be, how much time are you planning to allocate for the migration? Great. Thank you so much for participating, everyone. With those being launched, I will now pass it back to Darren.
I think Darren might be on mute. Emily, this is Sanjeev here.
100%. I was on mute. I'm good now. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, Emily. And sorry about that, folks. So it looks like, based on the polling, several of you are planning an upgrade. So how many variables are taken into account? Well, there are several. Chief among them are the number of users. How many people will actually be potentially impacted by these changes? The amount of content. After a BI system has been around for a while, there's often a lot of content that needs to be migrated, and how much of that is actual candidates for migration. Why are you moving? What are the capabilities you expect to gain from the platform that you're migrating to, and what will you give up from the platform that you're migrating from? What will the new experience be? So once you get to this new system, how will users respond to it? And how will you deal with internal support? And how will you handle system outage allotment? So oftentimes you'll have to do this over the weekend and hope for the best. So today we're going to talk about how you might consider doing this slightly different. Excuse me. The answers to these questions are going to be quite different for each organization. This all leads to task schedules that will be both stressful and risky. So let's talk about a better way. We're not going to pitch you on how we can manage your migrations or how we can ensure a timely completion of a BI replacement. Rather, we'll show you how you can take full control of that schedule and perform these important tasks without worrying about impact to users, service disruptions, quality and data validation, or any other pain you might have experienced. So here's how Thea does it. Some of you may have been introduced to Thea already. Today, we're going to focus on how Thea will break the dependencies of the underlying BI system, the time frame for performing migration tasks, and show you how to handle your next migration stress-free and cocktail in hand, if that's your thing. At the core of this independence from BI systems and versions is Thea's content organization capabilities. We're going to take a closer look at that shortly, but for now, I'll seed the idea that you can easily organize reports, queries, models, slides, anything from any BI system and any version of any BI system into a single folder structure. But for today's webinar, we're going to focus on the migration from Cognos 10 to Cognos Analytics. But throughout this presentation, I'll be reminding you that the process for undertaking this is exactly the same as if you were moving from, for example, BO to Cognos, or Click to Cognos, or Tableau to BO, or from whatever to whatever. All right, with that, let's get into it. What you're seeing here is a Thea game board. This is the evolution of the portal. This is the starting point for people to get through their workday. Notice that there's links to reports, summaries, tools, all kinds of good stuff. This might be a more engaging way for the people in your organization to kick off their workday. So a few things that Thea can do really well is blend information assets from many sources in one place. Notice how we have things like social content, right? Some RSS feeds, particularly coming from iTunes, which is fun for me. We've got some summary reports that you can click to through to the details. You can filter them and do all kinds of fun stuff with them. We also have quick access to tooling, links to other sites and other tools. We're going through our slides, and there's all kinds of ways that you can bring content together for the users in your organization. One quick little fact that I'll throw out there, and we'll talk about this in a future presentation, is Thea's ability to connect pretty much every other data discovery tool to your existing BI assets, such as IBM Cognos packages and models, or business objects, reports, and universes. And we'll talk about that another time, but I want to plant that idea. All right, so from a high level, Thea can bring things from several BI systems in a single place. Now, let's get into why we're here. We're talking about painless migrations. Here, we have a folder structure that contains lists of reports. Notice how these folders appear consistent in nature. Let's take a look at our marketing reports. And you'll notice how we have some Cognos reports, some click reports, and slides, all coexisting in a single folder structure. So if we go back to the introduction, we talked about Thea's capability to bring content together into a folder structure. And this is really what underpins our migration strategy. There's no real reason to distinguish why or where things came from. People simply learn to navigate a folder structure for specific content, and that's where they find it. You've effectively broken the dependency on which system serves it up. Let's go into some of these other folders. We'll look at organizational reports. Now this one here happens to be a folder of reports that are coming from Cognos 10, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on. This is what we're experiencing right now is Thea's capabilities for content organization. Within Thea, an administrator or individual with the appropriate capabilities can reflect folders from an underlying system. And as we're seeing this now, we're reflecting a folder structure from Cognos 10. Reflect individual artifacts from underlying systems. So let's go back to our marketing reports folder. And we see we're reflecting Cognos 10 content, Click content, and Google content. And create folder mashups with a variety of systems. And again, this is another example of exactly that. What this capability offers is the ability to create subject areas to serve specific business needs or specific groups of individuals with the content needed regardless of where it originates, which is a nice segue into migrating to Cognos Analytics without the downtime. All right, so let's take a look at the Sales Manager report. We're going to run this, and this is a Cognos 10 report that's been up and running for a while. Let's give that a few minutes to work. And it looks good, and this has been in production for quite some time. Now, oops, let me just close that. There we go. You notice that we have other reports living right next to it, and we'll talk about a little bit about that later. Now, for the purpose of this section of the presentation, let's look at migrating one report from Cognos 10 to Cognos Analytics. Now, everyone knows that the process of migration from 10 to Analytics is not going to be as simple as simply pointing Cognos Analytics to the old content store. You're going to have to take your time with this report and every other report that you want to migrate. You might make some changes to it. You'll have to validate that the data is correct and then accept it. From your past experiences, migrating from something like Cognos 10 to Cognos 11 might look like this. You might choose the Big Bang theory, where 1, you'll migrate all of your content. 2, you'll test that content. 3, you're going to flip that big switch over the weekend. And then 4, Monday becomes the brave new world, right? And for a lot of us who have gone through this, that's not always worked out the best way. So now you can take your time. You can target the reports that must be migrated early and focus on those. The rest can come after, or even possibly archived. Your business is unique, but for now, you have more options. So once again, we'll focus on the Sales Manager report. Let's assume that the Cognos 11 version of this has been migrated, tested, and vetted. And you can now choose to make it available to anyone using Thea on your schedule. You simply select this report and we'll edit where it's coming from. So currently, this is coming from Cognos 10, and you'll see this reflected in the breadcrumbing. What we'll do now is we'll go back to our configured systems. We'll choose Cognos 11. We'll navigate to its corresponding report in our folder structure, and we'll choose it. Here we go. My list of important reports. Sorry about the delay. Everyone's used to their BI environment not responding as quickly as possible all the time. So we'll let this grind through its cycle.
Hey, Dan, this is Sanjeev. So while that's running, can you just give a quick background of the social media collaboration component within THEA? I know we've seen a lot of interest in that.
Sure. So in THEA, just like other systems that you might be using, there's often a demand or a desire to incorporate some of the social systems that your users might be taking advantage of. So something as simple as your Twitter feed is a good example. You might have a company Twitter feed that you'd want to expose to your users, so you can pull those in. You might be using things like RSS feeds that are more targeted to specific individuals or specific groups of users. You might be looking at static news feeds, things that are very, very transient in nature or that are only specific to your organization, and there might not be an RSS feed out there for that. So there's different ways of pulling that in. We also currently have the capabilities to pull in a lot of Google content, whether it's your email, your contact lists, or some of your other systems that you might be using. We have the ability to collaborate to bring all of that into our dashboards. So just 1 second. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just having.
Yeah, this is very valuable because we've seen a lot of organizations today basically want to incorporate social media or any kind of collaboration, whether it's home built or any external ones like Twitter, into their organization. So I think I'm looking at the chat functionality on our meeting here, and I see a lot of people asking questions about what kind of screen that is. And just to let you guys know that what we've seen is a lot of companies are now asking for THEA to be the front page of their analytics interface, and this is where they can see multiple reports and game boards and even collaborate with end users. So that's it's always a huge plus for any organization, full visibility.
Yeah, and that's correct, Sanjeev. Oftentimes, if you've noticed on our game board, they look good, they're very engaging, and it's a way to attract users to the system. And as I'm going through this demo, just like every other software platform out there, it's dependent on some connection that I just recently lost. So I'm going to pause here for a couple of seconds and just try and get this up and running again. I apologize for the delay.
And just to give you guys answers on the polling questions, we have 44% of you have come back saying that you are planning to do. How much time are you planning to allocate for migration? Looks like 44% are looking to do this in the 1 to 3 months, followed by 32% in the 3 to 6 months, and then 24% in the more than 6 months. Just a few more very interesting. 95% of you are moving to Cognos Analytics, which is obviously a huge plus, and 14% are moving from business objects to Cognos, 5% moving from Tableau, and the rest are moving from Cognos itself. And are you planning on an upgrade? 79% are migrating, and this is what we've been seeing throughout the industry, is where a lot of users, a lot of companies have now seen Cognos Analytics. Obviously came out a year back, and they're seeing it with all the iterations as a solid platform to migrate end users to the Cognos Analytics base. So, good answers here. Darren, looks like you're back up.
I am. Thanks, Sanjeev. I apologize for that, folks. So what I've just done is I've selected the Cognos 11 version of that report. So now the next time the individuals come in to see this report, oh, there we go. The next time the individual comes in to see this report, they will be able to click on Sales Manager and see exactly that report, but it migrated in Cognos 11. So what we'll do next is we'll take a look at the logistics of migrating one report at a time, which sometimes is an option, but often could be a barrier to mass adoption. So in this case, our marketing reports folder contains reporting assets from different versions of Cognos, in this case 10 and Analytics, some Click, and some PowerPoint slides. So this can be a mashup of whatever it is that you want. By contrast, if we were to look at the operational reports, this particular folder is linked to a deck of reports in Cognos 10. So we have 6 reports that are important to this particular line of business. And instead of migrating them one at a time, what I'll show you now is how we migrate an entire folder of reports. So what I'll do is I'll go to this particular report, and just like we used for our individual report, we're simply going to repoint this folder to its corresponding folder of reports from Cognos 11. Now, I apologize, I'm using Cognos 11 and Cognos Analytics interchangeably. Haven't been around it in a long time. This is the first time that Cognos has come up with a new version that doesn't have a number at the end. So what we're going to do here is currently we're pointing to Cognos 10, 10.2 production with my important reports. What we'll do next, we'll go back to our root and we'll choose Cognos 11. And this time, instead of choosing a discrete artifact or a single report, we're going to point to our folder of reports that, of course, have been migrated, tested, and vetted. And once that's ready, we'll make these available to Thea users. So we seem to be stuck in the same place, but that's okay. What I'll do is while this is loading, I'll take you through some of the systems that we currently connect with out of the box. Oh, there we go. So now we'll take my important reports, because those are the ones we care about, and we'll simply repoint our virtual folder to the actual folder of reports in Cognos 11. And with that, our operational reports are now Cognos 11 reports. And any user who's using Thea continues to navigate this exact same content path, find the exact same structure or whatever structure you deem appropriate, and they're now subject to the new content. So what we've just looked at is how to migrate a discrete artifact with any interruption to the people in your organization, as well as migrate an entire folder of reports without any interruption to the people in the organization. Now, from time to time, it doesn't happen often, we all make a mistake. Let's just say you want to revert this last migration. You know what, you realize that the Cognos 11 or the Cognos Analytics version of these reports need some additional work, and you want to back that change out. That's not a problem. We simply follow the exact same process as we did before, where instead of going to the Cognos 11 version, we're simply going to go to Cognos 10. So you'll see now our path to this folder is Cognos 11, and we're going to go back and change it for our Cognos 10 folder. We'll use our important reports folder. And we now have those reports back to the Cognos 10 state until we've got the Cognos Analytics ones all set up. So now that we've established you can easily control which system any particular artifact comes from, you now have the option of controlling your next migration. All of this is possible because Thea connects to many versions of Cognos simultaneously. The same is true for other supported systems such as IBM Cognos, SAP Business Objects, TM1, Click, and Tableau. Once Thea is aware of those systems, you can control the content that comes through and rearrange it into even easier to consume structures. It's particularly helpful if you want all of your marketing reports, for example, in one place, whether they're coming from multiple versions of Cognos, VO, Click, or whatever. Think of Thea's folders as a single view to content from many systems. And with that, I'm going to go back to our welcome screen, and I will hand it back to Sanjeev.
All right, Dan, thank you very much. I don't see the PowerPoint yet show up, so you might have to do one slide below, one slide down. But thank you very much, and I'll tell you what, this presentation, we have been talking to a lot of clients about Thea. I'll just give you a quick background about myself. I am here at Cresco International. We're Motio as well as IBM business partner, Dallas-based, so we're right in Motio's backyard. And you know, I personally have been a fan of Motio products for the last decade, just because I see what they can do, and I call them the kings of migration, and this is what they're showing here, and the new product Thea basically just showcases that, right? You can take, you know, any business intelligence product and do migrations, and so along with that, so I just wanted to quickly let you guys know about what we do as well. So we do a lot of, you know, Cognos and business intelligence. We do TM1, SPSS, and prescriptive analytics or iLog, CPLEX. And so we do a lot of services around that. And what we've started seeing is a lot of clients, you know, moving to different platforms. And we have started doing a service around visualization, which we basically say, you know, we'll make your Cognos environment look prettier, look much more attractive, and make it look much more user-friendly than it is today in terms of the graphical representation, whether you're on Cognos 10 or Cognos 11/Cognos Analytics. And so these are some of the examples that we're seeing that we can accomplish, that you'll see this outside the box of Cognos. And Darren, next slide, please. And so this is, it's just to give you a quick 5-point overview of what we do and how we make this work is you know, if companies talk about big data, and so our solutions work much faster than traditional charting engines. Some of them sit on top of existing charting engines, depends what you want. They integrate with Cognos 10 and Cognos 11, and we're seeing that, you know, it's migratable, right? So if you're going from Cognos 10 to Cognos 11, whether you use Thea or you're doing it on your own, no matter what, these solutions work across both brands, and they're customizable, right? A lot of clients come back and say, hey, can you change the way this works, and, you know, coloration and whatnot. So that's basically what Cresco does. And so our relationship with Thea, with Motio, is not just around Thea, but it's also around all the other products that Motio does have. We do a lot of training in terms of helping companies migrate, or just finding out, you know, process improvement or production support, health checks. So we do train using Motio products as well as IBM stack of analytics software. With that, I think you know, we wanted to make sure that we give you a quick introduction into Thea and show you what it looks like. We are always available to answer your questions around Thea. And Darren and I are going to be here to answer your questions. I see a few more questions coming in, which Emily should be able to help us with. But just to give you guys an idea that we do a lot of migrations. We have done the largest cloud migration for IBM worldwide last year, and still ongoing. So it's a 6,000 plus user migration from Cognos 10 to Cognos Analytics on the cloud. And so we're the only business partner across the globe that has got the experience for such a large organization migrating. And so we can always give you tips and tricks and techniques, what we've seen works and what doesn't work. So this is information that you can give us a call and we can help you with any questions, because from our poll we see 80% of you are migrating over, which is a good sign. I can tell you Cognos Analytics or Cognos 11 is a very good product. It's doing really well, and IBM has got a lot of focus on that. So there's an entire IBM team supporting the migration process from 10 to 11, and also Thea products like Thea, the game boards. It's very easy to customize them. I don't know if Darren has time to show us how you can just move these storyboards around, but if you want, we can set up a separate time for you to spend more time with you guys and show you how this actually works. So with that being said, Darren, do you have anything else, or should we open up for questions?
No, I think we can open up for questions.
Okay, cool. Emily, do you have anything that we don't see here?
So we have a few questions here, and one is, how do you migrate portlets using your tool? I believe that's directed at Darren.
Sure. Is this question how you migrate Cognos portlets in terms of pages in Cognos Connection?
Norm says yes, who is the person who asked the question.
Okay. So if you already have Cognos Connection configured with your public pages or private pages or subject area specific pages, and you have all of the portlets that exist on there, the one way of doing it is to expose the same content that exists in those portlets in what we call tiles. So in terms of a one-to-one direct path, that doesn't currently exist. But what we believe is you can easily recreate a game board with the same content that the portlets contain in very, very little time. So hopefully that answers that question.
Okay, the next question, Darren, is, for the report upgrade validation, what does Thea do that Cognos Lifecycle Manager can't?
So they're two separate things, and I mentioned it earlier in the presentation, but in terms of the actual migration of content, Thea doesn't actually do anything. What Thea does is it prevents it sort of smooths the transition from one system to another by giving the users one place to come. So if you look at Thea right now, you've got different content coming from different systems. What I'll actually do is I'll quickly run into an example here of what I mean. So Lifecycle Manager and other products that migrate the content, that's one area that's just one area of the migration process. What we're doing here is we have the ability to bring in multiple versions of Cognos at the same time. And what that gives us the ability to do is to insulate the end users from those migration tasks that you're doing, the very tactical ones of moving content from A to B. They don't actually have to experience any outages or any retraining. So in addition to the actual migrating of one report or a folder of reports from Cognos 10 to Cognos Analytics, you also, at some point, you'll need to surface that content through to the end user community. And in the past, what you might have done is you might have had those folders show up in Cognos Connection, at which point you give the end user community a new link to the new Cognos Connection, or you would simply take one install and replace it with another, or sorry, one environment and replace it with another. What we're doing here is we give you the ability to do all of that migration that you have to do anyway, but really ease it into the user community without having to do the big bang. So all that to say is Thea actually doesn't do anything when it comes to the migration of content. What it simply does is it insulates the user community from the work that you already have to do.
Darren, so a follow-up for that was, so can you use this product to migrate from Cognos to Tableau or Click?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's really one of the big reasons for this is we've discovered, and Sanjeev can validate this, that a lot of our customers have multiple BI systems, and it used to be kind of something that no one really talked about, but this has come to the forefront in the last few years. During the early days of standardization, when companies like MicroStrategy and Cognos and Business Objects were really in that land rush for the new people that were going to embrace BI, That all went very well. It was very exciting times in the BI community. When the dust settled, organizations, move. They acquire companies, they sell off divisions, they bring on new people with new ideas, and fast forward to 2016, and the IT landscape looks a lot different than it did 10 years ago, where you have multiple standards, as well as a lot of individuals or departments within the organization that want to try out new technologies like Tableau, like Qlik, like Spotfire, and things like that. And as a result, there's this perception that it has to be one or the other. And what we're doing is we acknowledge that all of these tools have something very, very special to offer. Qlik, for example, has very, very responsive and very attractive visualizations. Whereas, Cognos might have some of that, but it doesn't appeal to everyone. But what Cognos does have, and systems like DO have, is a very, very rich and strong metadata layer that can provide governed data. Now, if you can bring all of these things together, it provides new opportunities that are pretty exciting for organizations to experiment with things like Tableau. So, to your Tableau question, yes, absolutely. In fact, I don't have Tableau provisioned on here, but I do have Qlik. You could, if you wanted to, take your sales manager report and have its equivalent in Qlik, and you simply change that so that you would point to Qlik instead of Cognos. This does two things. One, you might not have to replace all of your Cognos reports with Qlik. You probably wouldn't want to do that anyway. But it does give you the opportunity to try it out. So you might have I don't have a sales manager equivalent, but you could do, let me see what I've got in here. You could actually do an example where, let's pretend that the sales dashboard is actually the sales manager. You could simply repoint that artifact to the new one and launch it in Qlik. So yes, you can. You can actually, you can take Tableau assets and replace them with Cognos assets, or vice versa. But that change doesn't necessarily need to be permanent. It can be if you need to, but you can actually experiment and back these changes out. I have a bad habit of answering simple questions with many, many, many words. I apologize to those of you that are listening.
Darren?
Oh, yep, I can hear you now.
Darren, I think you bring up a good point. We have just had this experience where we've been servicing a company for many years now, and they have one of the best data warehouse systems that we've seen in a long time, and it's because of the discipline that they've maintained, even the governance and the way the users are disciplined to use the products. This company has actually acquired 6 more companies in the last 3 years, and what's happened is they've actually brought into the different BI platforms that these other companies are using. And so our job is to make sure that everything migrates over to Cognos Analytics, and to make sure that even some of those that don't get migrated over at least can be easily accessible by business users across. So Thea would be a great play. This is where it would actually start coming in. So it not necessarily means that you're moving from one product to another just because you don't like one product over the other, but also in this situation that I just mentioned. So definitely Thea is something that a lot of people have their eyes on.
Yeah, and to that point, Sanjeev, I hinted at the beginning when I walked through some of the examples of what we can do. We can definitely empower people that want to experiment or want to really broaden their deployments of things like Qlik or Tableau, but want the governed data or want to have the access controls and the governance that they currently enjoy in things like Cognos. And we can bring that all together. And I know that Emily will likely send out an email to an upcoming webinar where we showcase those capabilities as well.
I don't know if you mentioned, Darren, about game boards. Can you just talk about that real quick and how they work?
Sure. So effectively, game boards are based on Angular JS. They're using modern technologies. Effectively, what we have are very agile portlets that you can connect any of our content systems into it. And what I'll do, because we have a little bit of time here, I'm going to add another page to this game board. I'll just call it demo. And just to give the people on the line an idea of what's required. So typically when you start with a game board, it's a blank canvas. So there is a small learning curve involved to administer Thea and create content. We do subscribe to a similar paradigm to the other BI systems where there's sort of an administrator and then a producer-consumer model. What we'll walk through now is kind of the producer role. So effectively, what you can do is you can build out your game boards with a number of tiles that are broken up into different types of categories. So you might want to start something as simple as being able to view a report that you've got created, and just quickly walk you through that. So maybe we want to do a quick report. Oh, by the way, I never talked about this, but you can actually look at your content in many different ways. It doesn't have to be just a basic list. So let's bring our we'll use this, our targeted marketing. And while that's lighting up, you can bring other things, like you might want to bring in links to other applications or other pages in the system. If you want to go back to the welcome page if you wanted to. Just simple examples of that. So, real quick, you can start building out some of these game boards. We also have the ability to bring in other things like bookmarks or folder browser. So you saw our folder browser in our Painless Migration slide. You can actually expose those if you wanted to this way as well. So you can actually click on your content, whether it's your Google content or whatever it happens to be, and drive that action into another tile. So, this is the part where, if you remember the early days of Report Studio, where you can create different things, you'd see a demo that would look, nice, would look pretty like this, and there's a bit of work that goes into that. But having worked with this for some time now, building something as simple as this is usually about an hour to 2 hours. Initially, it's going to take a little bit longer, but as you can see, this is all familiar gestures. This is all things that people already know how to use. So yeah, that's how we do it.
Great, thanks. All right, Emily, did we have any more questions?
So we had one that says, just curious if your tool has to remain the middleman or not once the migration is done.
So it's not necessary in your infrastructure. So you don't need Thea to perform your migration. Where we believe Thea is beneficial is being actually not the middleman, but out in front. And I'll quickly go through what I mean by that. So right now, in this instance of Thea, we have all of these different systems provisioned. So we've got some Tableau, some Click, some Cognos, and so on. The reason we do it this way is, if you look here, we've got our Cognos 10 and our Cognos 11. I misspelled Cognos 10. It looks like Cognos 1, but it's actually Cognos 10. So you have all of these systems that exist in your environment, and you really are in control of which ones are going to provide content to the end users. So we don't really sit in the middle, we sit out in front, and we point to all of the other systems that are already in your environment. You can do your migration like you would have in the past. You don't need Thea at all for that. The challenge there is you'll be using one of the techniques that you would have in the past, where you're either provisioning two versions of the system or two different links to get to different versions of Cognos. You might have to wait till all of your content is migrated and so on. We just think that sitting out in front of these systems and letting those systems play to their strengths and only exposing what it is that you think is necessary to the business is a better way.
Okay, thanks, Darren. Do these migrations remain in your tool, or are they migrated to the BI tool?
So the migrations themselves are separate from how Thea exposes it. So the migration itself, if you are doing a wholesale change from Cognos 10 to Cognos Analytics, that migration has to take place, and there's no way around that. Organizations like Cresco and Motio are happy to step in and help you get through that with a mix of professional services and technology. But where Thea shines is your users don't necessarily have to wait for that entire process to be complete before they can start enjoying some of the benefits of the target platform that you're migrating to. So the systems underneath, the Cognos systems, they keep whatever it is that they're going to keep. So if you've moved 1,000 out of 10,000 reports from 10 to analytics, those are just facts. That simply exists. The Thea administrator may choose to expose all or some of those to the Thea user community, which also happens to be some of your Cognos user community as well. So you don't. It's not a matter of Thea warehousing or storing the results of a migration. What it simply does is it exposes the results of the migration on the timeline that you determine. That's just one of the benefits of the platforms.
Okay, thanks. Okay, actually they just said their last question was not necessary. Let me just try to find another one. Will there be any rework after migrating from business objects to Cognos 11?
Rework in terms of?
Actually, that person has left the conversation anyway, so I'll just scroll to a different question. Sorry about that. I just saw that it said it has left. How does the single sign-on work in Thea?
Like magic. So single sign-on does work. There's a number of ways we can do it. We support OAuth and SAML schemes. If you have your Cognos currently set up to do single sign-on with something like Windows authentication or things like that, we simply sit in that same workflow. So I'm happy to talk about or get someone to talk to you about how single sign-on works in your environment if that's of interest.
Okay. Thanks, Darren. Another question would be, well, actually, this I just wanted to tell you. Someone asked you to type the software name you have mentioned for the game board, if you could type it for them. So I don't know if you want to do that after or not. I think they just wanted it spelled out. If they want to reply and have give me more clarity on that question, that was at during your presentation, actually.
Okay. Yeah, we can go through and get some more information later.
Okay, and I know there was also a question about if any of the slides during this webcast will be available after, like if we'll send them out.
That's a great question, and I defer to the experts on that.
I think we will, right? I mean, we will have a recording as well, so folks should be able to rewatch or send the link out to others who were not able to join today's live session.
Okay. Yeah, so we will send that out with the recording then.
Okay, great.
I think we're almost out of time for today, and I think it looks like we've answered almost all the questions. If there's something else you wanted more information on, please reach out to Cresco or Motio. We will be more than happy to help you with your analytics needs. We will have like we just said, we'll have this recorded session on our site, and we will also send them out to any of the attendees, and we'll make sure to add the slides to that. From Motio and Cresco, we want to thank you for your time and your attendance. We hope to continue to bring you informative webcasts, and thank you for following us on social media, where we announce the latest and greatest in analytics. We hope you joined us in our live tweeting hashtag #GoodMigrations. If not, check out that hashtag afterwards. Thank you all, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Darren. Thanks, Emily.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.